So, we are doing a pathos analysis on this same article. We've already found out that through our ethos analysis that it's fairly biased. It's coming from the perspective of people who are involved at the highest level of business, the CEOs, the owners, and so they're obviously going to have a very specific point of view on whether minimum wage should go up because it will hurt their profits for sure. But there's also the other point of view, which is people who work for Loblaws and work for other companies they own, like Shoppers Drug Mart, who need that increase in their wages so they can make ends meet. So now we're looking at pathos. And as I've said before, pathos doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. Writers use pathos all the time. And as writers, we use pathos too. But there's a difference between pathos that is righteous and that is earned, right? A very emotional topic like the protests that are happening right now and the fact that people are outraged with police violence. There's no way to discuss that without using pathos because it's very emotional. But writers often use pathos in dishonest ways, in sneaky ways that serves their own agenda, serves their own point of view, and may be misleading. Now, remember that we're talking about minimum wage. And in the first paragraph, the writer says that drugstore companies like Loblaws have warned that the increase will threaten to harm their bottom line. Now, pathos often happens at the level of language and word choice. And we can see this happening here. They could have said um, that the increase in minimum wage would make their bottom line go up, that it would increase their costs, that it would lower their level of profit. Those would be very neutral ways of saying the same thing. But they've used these words that seem very violent, that seem very scary, and it's a way of trying to portray the increase in minimum wage as something that is scary, right? That is unpredictable, that is crazy. And so they're trying to make people scared of this increase in minimum wage so that they won't support it. The same thing happens here with the word balloon. They say that, oh, if the minimum wage goes up, their labor expenses will balloon by $190 million. Again, they could have said their labor expenses will go up, their labor expenses will increase, but they've used the word balloon. Now, they're automatically implying that they're going up in an unnatural way, like a balloon. But let's think about what happens if a balloon blows up too big. It explodes, it pops. So, again, just by choosing a word like balloon, they're playing on people's emotions because they want to make this increase in minimum wage seem unstable, unpredictable, explosive, and dangerous. And so that's why they're using those word choices. Now, pathos can also be used not just in the individual word choices, but when we think about who the writer is portraying as sympathetic. Who are they making the good guy and who are they making the bad guy? How are they portraying them and trying to make the reader sympathetic towards them? So here we've got this really interesting portrayal of Galen G. Weston himself. He's on a call with other people from the Loblaws company at their quarterly earnings conference. And it has him saying, at this point, we don't know the answer. It's interesting because they're talking about profits, they're talking about their expenses. It's in a very corporate environment, but the portrayal that the writer is giving us is almost like he's a dad in a family who is worried about how are they going to make how are they going to make ends meet this month? How are they going to pay their bills and cover their rent? And that's really more how the people who work at Loblaws are going to feel. But they're giving him this portrayal that's very sympathetic, like he just doesn't know how they're going to do it. And it's part of this writer's strategy to try to make us sympathetic towards Loblaws, sympathetic specifically towards Galen G. Weston, so that we will accept his point of view, so that we'll be more responsive to it. Remember, Galen G. Weston is the same guy who has more than $8 billion in the bank, has been convicted of things like price fixing and, manipulating prices to rip people off. He is, scumbag of the year 2017. So this is a very intentional portrayal. Now, this is the last one we'll do here, but as well as looking at language, the support that the writer uses to back up their claim, in this case, they're trying to claim that that an increase in minimum wage is bad, that can be very based on pathos as well. So when we take a look here, this is really the central supporting evidence that they use for their argument. They say that if minimum wage increases, well, they will have to they'll have to digitize more. They'll have to have more things like self-checkout machines. They'll have that down here. And it will result in job cuts. Now, this is a very emotional support. They're intentionally trying to make the job cuts seem scary. And if we really think about it, what Galen G. Weston is doing is making a threat, right? Oh, if these job cuts go up, if the government goes through with it, we're going to have to lay off a lot of people. Loblaw, it also owns things like No Frills and Shoppers Drug Mart. So they are one of the biggest employers in Ontario and in Canada of people earning minimum wage. And so they're doing this fear mongering. It's almost like a veiled threat, and it's supposed to scare people. And that is why this is also a way that the writer uses pathos. So just from a fairly quick scan here, we can see that from the ethos, we learn that, this is a pretty biased publication. It's a pretty biased author who's making this. They have an agenda in terms of how they want to portray the increase in minimum wage, and we can see how they're using pathos strategies to try to get people on their side, to try to make minimum wage increases seem like a bad idea, to try to make Galen G. Weston seem like a good guy for opposing them, and that's what they're trying to do with pathos in this one.